Okay, the next thing we'll wind up covering is jockey pumps or maintenance pump. This is a considerably smaller pump that will wind up keeping the pressures in the system so the fire pump does not start up. We wound up leaving an outlet off the city bypass for the jockey pump suction. If we set the pump, there are some restrictions as far as elevations of electrical parts off the pump room floor. The electrical code calls for them to be 12 inches up off the finished floor. There are some of the pumps that are built now that are the vertical turbines that meet that so they can be bolted directly to the floor. Some of the other types of pumps don't. So the housekeeping pads or however you mount those, you're going to have to take into consideration that 12 inches. So as the pump gets piped, we're talking about the suction coming into it. There is a shut-off valve that also needs to be an indicating valve with a tamper switch on it. As it goes through the jockey pump, there's going to wind up, and it depends on whose brand name you're installing. There's a possibility there may be a relief valve here. If the pump manufacturer does not supply one for that, it is not a requirement to be installed in there. The next thing is we're going to wind up with a check valve, and we need a 1/2 inch outlet for our sensing lines for the control to operate this, and then we're going to wind up needing another shut-off valve. If you look at the location on the fire pump and the jockey pump, we've got this outlet in between two shut-off valves. That's a requirement for NFPA 20 to be installed that way. Once in a while, one of these will slip, and it'll wind up getting installed up in here. And what the part of the problem is if the switch that this is going to operate goes bad, then you need to shut the water off and replace the switch. So if it's in between the two isolation valves, then it's not much of a problem to get inside the control panel and change that out. When we get ready to do a startup on this, because this is a 3-phase motor that's on there, there's going to wind up being a rotation arrow on it somewhere that's going to show you which way that's going to turn. When you get ready to do that and the electrician has finished his wiring up inside there, then we can go ahead and he will bump that and check for rotation. What that means is he'll turn the power onto it and just barely hit the start button, and somebody will wind up checking it to make sure that it's rotating the right way. If it is not, this is a 3-phase motor, so there's going to wind up being 3 wires going into it. All you're going to wind up having to do is shut the power down, and you're going to wind up switching these 2 wires. It doesn't make any difference which 2. You can take this one and this one, or this one and this one, unhook them from the landing spot, switch the wires, tighten them back up good and tight, and then check your rotation again. It should be correct. With the jockey pumps, we want to make sure that you check the voltage on the control panel and the voltage on the electric motor, and you want to check the horsepower. They're on the front tag on the control panel. It will give you the horsepower. It will give you the voltage. We want to make sure that those match with the electric motor. If they don't match, you need to let the manufacturer know that there's a problem with it to make sure that when the startup man comes out to do his job, he can bring the parts to fix it. What you don't want to do is have him come out and say, hey, I'm ready for the test, and then find out that it's not going to operate. The other thing is that on some of them, there is a small vent on the pump itself. As you turn the water in, you can crack the vent and get rid of the air out of that. Otherwise, there's a possibility of them airlocking, and then the device won't pump any water at all. Also if it's not a vertical turbine, if it's a centrifugal, we want to make sure that instead of putting those on the floor, because sometimes there's not enough space in that we can put those up off the floor. If it's a centrifugal, we want to make sure that you mount it in a horizontal position. If we try to wind up putting it in a vertical position, what it does, pushing down, it winds up causing some problems with some of the bushings and that, and seals, and causes them to wear out faster. So keep those in a horizontal position, and then we're ready to go.